think about the last time you were, locked in a really frustrating, just deeply petty argument.
Oh, yeah. We've all been there.
Right. You're standing there and you're bickering over, like, who left the dishes in the sink or who forgot to send that email. And suddenly you get this intense flash of exhaustion.
Yes, that familiar wall.
Exactly. You just think, I swear we have had this exact same right 100 times before.
Because it feels like you aren't really arguing about the dishes anymore. Right? You're just playing out a pre-written script of behavioral patterns.
Well, okay, but imagine if it wasn't just a metaphor. Imagine if you could actually hit rewind, zoom all the way out, and realize that you literally have been having this exact fight with this exact person for thousands of years.
Which is a lot to take in.
It's wild. Like, maybe in a past life, the person you're arguing with was a remarkably arrogant horse and you were a very patient minister. Suddenly, your current argument isn't about the present moment at all. It's about a cosmic cyclical pattern you've both been trapped in for millennia.
And that is a pretty staggering way to reframe your daily annoyances. Because you're no longer just dealing with a roommate or a coworker, you are dealing with the echoes of ancient history.
And that cosmic reframing is exactly where we are heading today in this deep dive. We are pulling from the 1895 translations of a massive ancient text known as the Jataka.
Yeah, edited by E.B. Cowell.
Right. And these texts, they date back to at least 380 BCE. And they are essentially a collection of fables that frame the previous incarnations of the Buddha, both in human and animal form.
And it is a staggering amount of material. I mean,
Yeah.
We're talking about 550 distinct birth stories here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, divided into 22 books for Napatas. But the thing that really clicked for me when going through these sources is that, well, it's incredibly easy to write them off as just dusty religious texts.
Or like simple fairy tales, right?
Exactly. But when you actually look at the mechanics of the stories, they are razor-sharp mirrors of human psychology.
So before we get into the actual stories, which are, I have to say, surprisingly funny and sometimes pretty wild, we need to establish how this whole thing is structured.
Right, the framework.
Yeah, the preface points out something really interesting. It compares the Buddha's memories to the ancient Greek philosopher Pythagoras.
Oh, right, because Pythagoras famously claimed he could remember past lives.
Right, like being a warrior named Euphorbus during the Trojan War. But the text makes a point of saying the Buddha's recollection is on a completely different scale.
Well, yeah, because Pythagoras was remembering, a handful of specific heroic human lives. The Buddha, in these texts, is remembering hundreds and hundreds of lives spanning entirely different species.
Entirely different realms of existence, vastly different social classes.
Exactly. He was a king, an outcast, a deer, an ox, a god. It's vast.
And the structure of the Jatakas perfectly mirrors that vast memory. Each story follows a very specific formula. Okay, let's unpack this. It always starts with a story of the present.
Which is usually a current, real-time event.
Right, or a conflict happening among the Buddha's monks. And that present-day drama prompts the Buddha to essentially say, well, this isn't the first time this has happened.
Yeah, it's like a cinematic flashback.
Exactly. He launches into the story of the past, which is a flashback to a previous life where those exact same people played out incredibly similar dynamics. And in these past lives, the Buddha is known as the Bodhisattva.
Which just means a being destined to eventually become a Buddha.
Right. But how does this cyclical view of time and relationships change the way a person actually interprets their daily conflicts?
It's a brilliant narrative device, honestly.
Yeah.
The Buddha uses these past life flashbacks to assign a much deeper causality to human behavior.
Like getting to the root of the issue.
Precisely. Let's say a monk is struggling with his meditation and just wants to give up. The Buddha doesn't just tell him to try harder. He tells him a story proving that this failure of perseverance isn't an isolated incident.
It's a pattern.
Right. It's an echo of a mistake that monk has made across dozens of lifetimes.
Wait, I'm trying to wrap my head around the practical application of this. If I'm that monk and someone tells me, hey, you're failing today because you also failed as a merchant 3,000 years ago, doesn't that just feel incredibly fatalistic?
How so?
Like, why even try if I'm stuck in this loop?
Oh, I see. Well, it's actually the opposite of fatalism. It's about radical self-awareness. In this worldview, realizing you are in a loop is literally the only way to break out of it.
Oh, okay.
The Buddha is essentially saying, look, you've been blindly running the same faulty software program for 500 lifetimes. Now that you finally see the code, let's make this the lifetime where you patch the glitch.
I love that analogy.
Right. Understanding the why behind your own behavioral patterns is the key to finally breaking the cycle of suffering.
That makes a lot of sense. Can't fix what you can't see. And that actually brings us to the first major theme we pulled from these texts, which is the sheer grit required to break those cycles. Because when the Bodhisattva takes human form in these past lives, he is absolutely not just sitting passively under a tree waiting for enlightenment.
Not at all. The texts portray him with a level of resourcefulness that, frankly, borders on ruthless efficiency.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the Vantapatha Jataka. In this past life, the Bodhisattva is a merchant leading a caravan across a deadly 60-league sandy wilderness.
And for context, 60 leagues is roughly 180 miles.
Yeah, and the text describes the sand as so fine it slips right through your fingers. And during the day, the sun heats it until it's literally like walking on glowing charcoal. So the caravan can only travel at night.
They have to navigate it like sailors on the open ocean. They rely on a desert pilot who reads the stars to guide the carts through the dunes.
Exactly. But on the final night, they are just 7 miles from the edge of the desert. And the pilot is so exhausted that he falls asleep at the helm.
A disaster.
It's total disaster. In the dark, the oxen slowly turn themselves entirely around, and by dawn, the caravan is right back where they started the night before. And here is the terrifying part.
Oh, the supplies.
Yes. Thinking they were almost out, they had dumped all their spare wood and water to lighten the load. When the sun comes up and they realize what happened, the entire caravan just collapses under the carts in total despair, basically waiting to die.
It's a total nightmare scenario. But notice the Bodhisattva's mechanism for solving it. He doesn't panic. But he also doesn't, drop to his knees and pray for a miraculous rainstorm.
Right, he takes action.
He starts pacing around in the cool of the morning, actively reading his environment, and he spots a single clump of kusa grass.
And from that grass, he deduces there has to be a water source deep underground. So he orders his men to start digging. And they dig down 60 cubits, which is about 90 feet. They dig 90 feet down by hand, only to hit a solid sheet of bedrock. At that point, everyone loses heart again. But the Bodhisattva climbs down into this 90-foot hole, puts his ear to the bedrock, and hears the faint sound of water flowing underneath.
He knows it's there.
Yeah. He calls down a young lad who is the only servant who hasn't totally given up and tells him to take a massive iron sledgehammer and smash the rock.
And the lad does it. The rock splits, the underground river breaches, and water shoots up as high as a palm tree. The caravan is saved.
It's an amazing visual.
It is. But what's fascinating here is the reason this story is told. It goes back to the story of the present, that young lad with the sledgehammer. The Buddha reveals that he is the exact same monk who is currently on the verge of giving up his spiritual practice.
Oh, wow. So the Buddha's telling him, you had the grit to smash through solid bedrock and save us all in a past life. You have this resilience inside you. Don't lose your nerve now over a mental hurdle.
Precisely. It directly connects physical worldly perseverance to spiritual endurance.
But the text takes that worldly resourcefulness even further. I mean, it's not just about surviving deserts. It's about sheer hustle. We have to talk about the Kulaka Sethi Jataka, the story of treasure a little.
Yes.
I read this and immediately thought of that modern internet challenge where a guy started with a single red paperclip, kept trading it for slightly better things, and eventually traded up to a house.
Well, the ancient equivalent of the red paperclip is a dead mouse.
Right. The Bodhisattva is a wealthy treasurer who points to a dead mouse on the dirt road and casually remarks that a clever man could take that dead mouse and start a business.
And a poor young pupil overhears this and takes him up on the challenge.
And the escalation of his trades is just a masterclass in economics. First, he picks up the dead mouse and sells it to a local tavern to feed their cat. They pay him a single farthing.
Which is basically a microscopic fraction of a penny. It's a literal scrap of copper.
Yeah, but he takes that copper, buys a tiny bit of molasses and drinking water, and waits at the edge of the forest for flower gatherers to return. They are exhausted, so he gives them the sweet water, and they pay him with handfuls of flowers, which he sells to buy more molasses.
He is constantly looking for arbitrage, finding discrepancies in value and capitalizing on them.
Exactly.
Soon after, a heavy storm hits the king's pleasure garden, blowing down branches and leaves everywhere. The young man goes to the groundskeeper and offers to clear the massive mess for free on the condition that he gets to keep the wood.
And then he bribes a bunch of local kids with his molasses to do all the heavy lifting for him.
He essentially invents subcontracting.
He really does. He gets the kids to pile up the wood and then sells the entire pile to the king's potter, who desperately needs fuel for his kilns. Now he has real capital.
Real money to play with.
Exactly. He sets up a water station for 500 grass mowers, providing them hydration for free. So he builds up massive social capital. When he hears a horse dealer is coming to town with 500 horses, he calls in his favor with the mowers.
This is the best part.
He asks each of them to give him one bundle of grass and asks them not to sell any of their own grass until his is sold. He completely corners the local market on horse feed. The dealer has no choice but to buy from him for 1,000 pieces of money.
And his final move is pure venture capitalism. He hears a ship has arrived in port. He hires a luxury carriage on credit to look like a wealthy aristocrat, goes down to the docks, and buys the entire ship's cargo on credit, using his signet ring as a deposit.
The ultimate bluff.
It works. When 100 other merchants show up from the city to buy the goods, they find he has a total monopoly. They each have to pay him a premium just to get a share, and then pay more to buy him out of his claim.
It's unbelievable. In 4 months, he turns a dead mouse into 200,000 pieces of money.
It's an incredible story.
Okay, but wait, I have to stop here and push back on this because I am genuinely confused. Are these purely spiritual texts, or were they essentially acting as ancient self-help and business manuals? Because I thought the entire point of Buddhism was non-attachment. Monks literally take vows of poverty. Why on earth is the hero of this religious text, acting like an ancient Wall Street tycoon, isn't manipulating the local grass market completely contradictory to spiritual enlightenment?
It definitely seems like a massive contradiction to us, but in the context of the Jatakas, it really isn't. The text refuses to separate mundane intelligence from spiritual intelligence.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the Bodhisattva is demonstrating apoya, or skillful means.
Skillful means.
Right. The ingenuity it takes to deduce water under a rock, or the intense mental sharpness required to read a market, anticipate needs, and leverage social capital. That is the exact same caliber of mental acuity required to navigate the complexities of your own mind and attain enlightenment.
Oh, I see.
The text is basically arguing that a dull mind cannot wake up. The Bodhisattva's business acumen is proof of his hyper-awareness.
That is fascinating. So the sharpness is a virtue regardless of whether you're applying it to a port monopoly or a meditation practice. But if human ingenuity is praised, the Jatakas also have a very specific way of tearing down our flaws. And to do that, the texts make a hard pivot away from human characters and dive straight into the animal kingdom.
Yes, the animal fables are where the psychological critique gets incredibly sharp.
Let's really get into the Jataka, because this one is just so perfect. You have the king's royal state charger, right? This magnificent, decorated horse.
A very important horse.
Very important. And one day, the horse is taken down to the river for his usual bath, but he absolutely refuses to step into the water. The Bodhisattva, who is acting as a wise minister in this life, is sent down to figure out what physical ailment the horse has.
But he quickly realizes the horse isn't sick at all.
No, he's just a massive snob.
He is.
The minister does some digging and finds out that right before the royal horse arrived, a common, everyday hack of a workhorse had been washed in that exact spot in the river.
The indignity.
Right. The royal horse could smell it and was so deeply offended that he refused to step into the same water. So the minister just rolls his eyes, orders the groom to lead the horse a little further down the river to a fresh spot, and the horse happily takes his bath.
It's such an absurd situation, but it perfectly illustrates the trap of pride.
Yeah.
And the text does the exact same thing with the concept of jealousy in the Muchagataka. You have two hardworking oxen, Big Red and Little Red.
And Little Red is furious. He complains to his brother because they work the fields from dawn till dusk on terrible rations, while the family pig, Mucha, just lies around all day getting fat on the absolute best food.
But Big Red, who is the Bodhisattva, tells his brother to stop being jealous. Why? Because the pig is the main course for an upcoming wedding feast.
He's not being pampered, he's being prepped.
Exactly. Big Red points out the grim reality of the situation. And then we see the danger of base craving in the Vetamika Jataka.
Oh, this one is sad.
It is. This features a wild, jungle-haunting wind antelope. These animals are famously skittish. I mean, they run at the drop of a leaf.
But a slave girl manages to lure this incredibly wild, free creature all the way out of the deep forest and straight into the walls of a palace.
Right, and how does she do it?
Simply by smearing honey on a bundle of grass. She just offers it a taste of this honeyed grass a little closer every single day until the craving completely overrides the animal's natural survival instincts, and it walks willingly into captivity.
It's a powerful warning.
So what does this all mean? We have a snobby horse, a jealous ox, and a sugar-addicted antelope. Why do you think the Buddha chose to use animals to teach human monks who were reportedly struggling with these exact issues about desire and pride?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's because humans are incredibly gifted at rationalization.
Oh, definitely.
If you tell a monk a story about a human who acts out of pride or jealousy, the monk can distance himself from it. He can say, well, my pride is different. My pride is justified because I'm spiritually advanced. Or my desire for good food is just about maintaining my health so I can meditate.
Right. We dress our flaws up in sophisticated intellectual language.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, it's like using sci-fi to talk about politics.
What do you mean?
Like how Star Trek used aliens to discuss the Cold War or racism. If you talk directly about a controversial political issue, people get defensive instantly. But if you make it about the Klingons and the Romulans, their guard drops, and they actually absorb the moral of the story.
That is a perfect analogy. By projecting these behaviors onto animals, the Buddha completely strips away the human capacity for rationalization. It makes the critique completely visceral.
It's raw.
It tells the listener, when you get defensive over someone sitting in your favorite spot or you obsess over a good meal, you aren't being a sophisticated intellectual. You are acting with the base instinctual simplicity of a farm animal staring at a trough.
Wow. It forces a radical, almost embarrassing level of self-awareness.
It absolutely takes the ego down a peg.
It's really hard to feel self-righteous when you realize you're acting exactly like a snobby horse. But this brings up a huge question for me. If base instinct and dominance are the traps, what does the text present as the ultimate moral ideal?
That's the core question.
Because we've established that the Bodhisattva is clever, but just being a clever merchant isn't the pinnacle of this philosophy.
No, it's not.
The Jatakas seem to argue that true ultimate power looks entirely different from what the ancient world expected.
Yes, and this is where the texts become deeply, deeply subversive. In the ancient world, power was defined almost exclusively by martial strength and dominance. But the Jatakas defined ultimate power as absolute, self-sacrificing compassion.
Which we see so vividly in the Niggurāmigga Jataka. The Bodhisattva is banyan deer, the majestic leader of a forest herd. There's another herd nearby led by branch deer.
And the human king of Benares loves to hunt.
Yeah.
He's just indiscriminately terrorizing both herds, shooting arrows, causing mass panic.
So, to stop the chaotic slaughter, Banyan and Branch make a grim pact with the human king. They will draw lots, and one deer will voluntarily walk to the execution block every single day.
It institutes a horrific kind of order.
It does. But the system breaks down when the lot falls on a pregnant doe from Branch Deer's herd. She goes to Branch Deer and pleads for her life, arguing that while she was chosen, her unborn fawn was not. It's unjust for 2 lives to be taken for 1 lot.
But Branch Deer refuses to hear it. He relies on cold, bureaucratic logic. The lot has been drawn, the rules are the rules, you must go.
So terrified, she flees to Banyan Deer. And Banyan Deer, the Bodhisattva, doesn't just offer her sympathy. He walks straight to the royal kitchens and lays his own neck on the execution block in her place.
Which completely upends the human king's worldview. When the king sees Banyan Deer, a magnificent creature he had previously granted personal immunity to, laying on the block, he is stunned.
He asks why he is there. And when Banyan Deer explains that he willingly took the doe's place because he couldn't bear the cruelty of the system, the king is essentially broken by it.
It changes him entirely.
The king is so moved by this act of ultimate empathy that he not only spares Banyan Deer and the doe, but he issues a decree granting immunity to all living creatures in his kingdom. By choosing to surrender their lives, these leaders actually win the day. Is this text deliberately subverting the ancient world's traditional definition of kingship and martial power?
This raises an important question about the Buddhist definition of power. Because yes, we see an even more extreme subversion of martial power in the Kulavaka Jataka.
Oh, the chariot story.
Right. Here, the Bodhisattva isn't an animal. He is Saka, the king of the Devas, the gods. He is locked in a massive cosmic war with the Asuras, who are essentially demons.
And Saka is losing the battle and fleeing in his chariot of victory. And to understand the scale here, the text says this chariot is 150 leagues long.
Okay, doing the math, a league is about 3 miles. So this chariot is roughly 450 miles long.
That is a war machine the size of France flying through the sky.
Exactly. It's an unstoppable, continent-sized juggernaut. And as he's fleeing over the deep ocean, his massive chariot is plowing through the silk cotton trees, completely destroying the nests of the Karuva birds.
Sokka hears the screams of the baby birds tumbling into the sea.
And he turns to his charioteer, Motley, and orders him to turn the massive chariot around. He says, I offer up a willing sacrifice my life to yonder asuras. These poor birds shall not through me from out their nests be torn.
Which is objectively insane from a military standpoint. He is choosing to drive a chariot the size of France directly back into a waiting army of bloodthirsty demons, willingly offering his own life just to avoid crushing some baby birds.
But here's the massive paradox that makes this story so brilliant. When the Asura army sees this 450-mile-long chariot suddenly whip around and charge directly back at them, they completely panic.
They assume Sokka must have just received massive reinforcements, and they break ranks and flee in terror. By choosing to lay down his life, Sokka inadvertently wins the entire cosmic war.
It is a stunning visual metaphor, and it forces you to completely rethink what strength actually is. We are so conditioned to think that the person who exerts the most force, the king shooting the arrows or the Asuras conquering territory, is the most powerful.
Right.
But these texts argue that the highest form of power is the ability to exercise absolute restraint. Banyandir and Sokka don't win through martial superiority. They win because their moral purity is so absolute, their compassion so unshakable, that it literally bends reality around them.
It shocks a violent king into righteousness, and it terrifies a demon army into retreat. The guy who drops the sword is actually the strongest being in the universe. That is an incredibly heavy, beautiful concept to pull from a story about a giant flying chariot.
It really is.
And honestly, that incredible range is the defining feature of the Jataka Tales. We've gone from the gritty, practical hustle of a guy turning a dead mouse into an empire, to the visceral, psychological mirrors of snobby horses, all the way up to redefining the cosmic nature of power and sacrifice.
And what's truly a testament to the power of these stories is that they didn't just stay isolated in ancient India. As Cowell points out in his preface, these exact narrative structures floated around the globe for centuries. They transcended their religious origins.
You did.
Variations of these fables were used by medieval European friars to keep their congregations awake during sermons. They show up in the writings of Boccaccio, and Chaucer even unknowingly put a variation of a Jataka story into the mouth of his partner in the Canterbury Tales. They are foundational to global storytelling.
Because they speak to something incredibly universal about the human condition. Which leaves you, listening to this, with something pretty wild to think about. If, as the Jatakas suggest, we are continually repeating the same interpersonal dynamics over thousands of lifetimes, the same petty jealousies, the same moments of greed, and the same opportunities for sacrifice.
The same loop.
Right. What story of the present are you writing right now? And which ancient character are you playing today without even realizing it? The next time you walk into a room and feel that flash of exhaustion over a familiar argument, ask yourself, is today the day you finally break the cycle?
A very humbling question to carry with you the next time you find yourself arguing over the dishes in the sink.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll catch you on the next one.